Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. For today's webcast, we'll be focusing on maximizing operational efficiency with tethered UAS for public safety, with a particular focus on a brand photokite. And we're honored to have an incredible panel of experts joining us to share their insights and experiences on this particular topic. Next slide. Now, before I introduce the panel, here's a quick look at the outline. We'll start with panel discussions, then we'll have a quick Q&A towards the end and close out with the recording link and contact resources. But before we do that, just a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being recorded. All participants are muted and cameras are off. So if you do have any questions during the session, please submit them in the Q&A chat below. Again, we'll provide a link with the recording at the end of the session, along with a few additional resources for you. Next slide. Now let's meet our esteemed panelists. Moderating today's webcast is Chris Martorana, who's our photokite marketing director, and he'll be guiding the panelists along on today's session. Our first panelist is Jason Day. Jason is the director of unmanned aircraft at the Texas Department of Public Safety. And Jason has over 27 years of military, civilian, and public safety aviation experience. He oversees nearly 300 remote pilots in unmanned aircraft. He also plays a key role in shaping UAS policies, procedures, and training standards for public safety agencies. Welcome, Jason. Thank you for joining us. And next up, we have Chief Daniel Cheatham, who is the program manager for the Phoenix Fire Department UAS program. He currently holds both a Part 61 pilot's license and a Part 107 remote pilot certificate. He has nearly 27 years of service, including 8 as a chief officer, and he brings an immense passion for aviation and public safety. Welcome, Chief. Lastly, we have Matt Sloane, who is the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Skyfire AI. With over a decade of experience in public safety and drone technology, Matt assists agencies with integrating drone programs into their critical incident response plans. He is also a licensed pilot and former EMT and remains heavily active in shaping drone regulations and policy. So welcome, Matt. With that, I'll hand things over to our moderator, Chris Martorana, to kick off today's discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. And I just want to thank the panel experts again for taking the time to join us. I hope everybody here in attendance finds it as valuable as we all will. So thank you, guys. So just to start, I don't want to take too much away from the discussion, the panel, but I just want to go over a quick overview for a couple minutes of what an AT-UAS is, or an actively tethered UAS. So this will be a refresher for some of you, but this is just a quick rundown. So in the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018, they established an AT-UAS as a new category. So in order to be in this category, you had to meet a certain criteria. So some of the main points of criteria were it has to be 55 pounds or less, can't go any higher than 150 feet above AGL, above ground level. It has to be physically attached to a ground station with a taut tether that provides continuous power to the UAS, or unmanned aircraft. So it also needs to be controlled and retrieved by that ground station through physical manipulation of the tether. So and lastly, one of the main requirements is that it needs to maintain safe flight control in the event of a power or flight control failure. So in other words, if something happens to this system while it's flying, there's some type of interruption, interference, the system isn't going to fall out of the sky. It's going to maintain itself and go into an automatic landing. So it's just another safety feature built in. And some of the benefits of this very different type of technology is that it's enhanced safety, and that's due to the tether, because it acts as a physical safeguard. So it eliminates risk of flyaways, uncontrolled descents. It gives you that piloting free operation, as you guys saw in that video, and it's an elimination of redundant controls, and that's due to that tether. So the other big advantage is that due to the tether, it has unlimited flight time. So we actually had our a photo kite system flying for almost 40 days straight, so over a month. So that really exemplifies how this new classification of drone is very different than a regular free-flying drone. So the tether also allows for real-time transmission of high-quality video system controls. Again, thanks to the tether, and it allows it completely takes out dependency on remotely transmitted video and controls. So, and lastly, the main benefit is that versatility of this. You can arrive on scene and deploy this in just a few seconds. And then last, and this is important for you all to know if you don't already know. Last year, the FAA had another reauthorization of 2024, and this amplified some of the operational flexibility even further. So as long as you're a public safety agency, so that means volunteer firefighter, career firefighter, law enforcement personnel, anyone under that umbrella, you do not need a remote pilot certification. You do not need a Part 107 nor a COA, or a certificate of authorization, to operate a actively tethered UAS or ATUAS. So that's important because that removes that bottleneck, that need for that drone pilot to come on scene. However, that is still an extremely important position. It allows anyone in the department to deploy, get that situational awareness, share that data of what is happening on scene as soon as possible, and allow for that drone pilot to show up and maybe fly free-flying drones if necessary. So this is not a replacement of a free-flying drone. It's just a new tool, a new classification. So, and lastly, and this is also important to know, is you can fly this, an ATUAS, in zero grid airspace. So what that means is as long as it's an emergency or life-threatening situation, you can deploy this unit. You just have to notify air traffic control when and where, but you do not need permission to fly. So again, it gives you that flexibility to deploy. So these exemptions, they reduce the administrative burden, operational barriers for public safety agencies, and it enables faster and more efficient deployment of this force multiplying UAS category. So that's my spiel of the of what an ATUAS is. And again, at the end, just put some questions in the chat. We'll get to those after we get through some of this panel discussion. But feel free to put any questions that you have. So let's dive into to the first panel question that I have for you guys. First question is, what factors influence your agency's decision to adopt tethered UAS like PhotoKite, and what are some of the advantages you observed in terms of deployment, safety, and ease of use compared to free-flying drones? What do you guys think?
Well,
Jason,
I'll
I'll
kind of kick
start
it
with
off.
you. Yep.
So, good morning or afternoon, wherever you're at right now, everybody. I'm Jason Day. I'm the Director of Unmanned Aircraft for Texas Department of Public Safety. Tethered drones are a huge benefit in multiple use cases. Sometimes we use them independently. Sometimes we use them with our other drones. And we use them in a lot of different environments. A really great example is our Capitol complex. We have a lot of protests, parades, mass gathering events, and sometimes we need an aircraft just to sit up a couple hundred feet and keep eyes on a certain area of the complex. And then if something goes on, if there is some type of response needed, then we launch another drone to actually move to that event. But you can leave the tethered drone up for a long period of time, and you're not having to come up and down and swap out batteries. And there's a huge safety factor with that too, right? Because we operate on the rooftop of government buildings in downtown. It is way less riskier to fly on a tether drone because we only spool out the tether to the length that if it falls, it's going to fall on top of a government building. And we know there's no risk to any people on the ground or things like that. It's also been beneficial in that exact instance or environment to allow us to get a waiver to be able to fly lower cloud base than you could with normal assets, right? Because we can prove that, hey, we don't necessarily need a 500-foot ceiling to be safe. We could have a 300-foot ceiling, keep that aircraft up, and monitor ADS-B and other mechanisms. We were able to get that waiver to use tethered drones in this use case. So I'll pause there and let the chief take over.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, in addition to some of the things that he just mentioned, for us, Phoenix is huge, spread out over 520 square miles. So we do have a dedicated drone vehicle that responds to incidents all over, but it gives us, tethered drones gives us more of a tiered response. So we have them on a couple of our battalion chief rigs, so they're able to respond early, and our drone truck may be maybe coming from several first dues away to respond to a fire. So it gives us a tiered system of tethered drones on scene, and then our free flying ones backing them up. Another really big factor was anybody in the fire service probably has heard of Don Abbott's Mayday report. And a Mayday, as we all know, is when the firefighter gets in trouble. But a big part of that was that most of those Maydays happened, about 80%, with the first arriving trucks. So with our battalion chiefs being able to have a tethered drone on their truck in the early response, that gives them increased situational awareness in hopes of helping mitigate some of those potential Maydays, because they're able to see maybe some hidden obstacles, dangers, things like that. And then one of the things that just like Chris mentioned, it doesn't take somebody away from a job that they already have. So our battalion chief, he's running the incident. They're able to just pop it up with the press of a button. They don't need a 107 license. And it's a lot easier to spool them up and teach them how to use it. So those are just a few of the reasons why Phoenix implemented using UAS. The ease of use, the help for situational awareness, decrease Maydays early on, and having that tiered response.
So it's, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to add that the only other use case where I've seen it and where we actually got to use it, although I don't work for an agency, we do, work on behalf of several agencies, as a service. And one of the times we got to use it pretty effectively was during the Super Bowl in Atlanta back in 2019. And that was particularly important to be tethered because it was obviously, very restricted airspace under a massive TFR, a temporary flight restriction. And so the only way that the FAA would actually allow us to fly was using a tethered system, and it worked flawlessly. So yeah, it can be a really useful tool. If you don't have the resources, or if you don't have the authorizations or anything else that you might need with a free fly UAS, that's where tether could be super useful.
That's really interesting. So I wanted to ask.
Can I add something to the 107 certificate thing there? That's a lot of agencies don't know how big of a change that actually is. So for us, for years, we've been looking at how do we incorporate drones into our command trailers. Texas DPS, huge agency, we're covering the entire state. We have a lot of command trailers. We have a lot of assets all over the place. And the real barrier to entry on this and getting our comms folks more involved in drone activities was the fact that they were going to have to go and get their 107 certificate. They were then going to have to maintain annual proficiency, go through our entire training course. There's labor hours and cost involved in all of that. Now, if we can scale that so that we can do a very limited amount of training on how to launch and recover the tethered drone, it removes a lot of those costs and allows us to deploy more tethered assets across the state and provide better coverage. So and that was a huge, that language change was huge for us.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things I would say, when we're talking to customers, that's kind of where the eyebrows go up, like, wow, that really helps us with our operational flexibility. I wanted to actually turn the question to the attendees. If you guys would, please put up an emoji if you guys use UAS, any type of drone to some capacity with your department. I just wanted to get a feel of who's using what. I've already seen a lot of emojis popping up. So I guess, and then kind of going back to the panel, wanted to ask you guys, it sounds like both of you, Daniel and Jason, you guys are using free flying drones and a photokite system. Is it pretty typical that you guys use both on scenes, or is it pretty common that you'd arrive first with the tethered drone, or how does that look in real life on the field?
Well, that's a complex question because no two situations are exactly alike, right? If
Mhm.
you have a bailout, you have a barricaded subject, it's going to be whoever's closest with the assets. But if you can pre-plan stuff, sometimes you were just using a tethered drone. Other times you're using a layered approach, like the chief was talking about. You know, a good example is we got a call 4 or 5 months ago. There was a big court case in one of the cities here in Texas, and they were worried about the safety of the um, some of the court officials and things like that when they were coming in and out of the courthouse. So instead of having a drone, you know, just orbiting that entire area, we took a tether drone out there, we put it up, and it just stayed there at the doors of the courthouse all day long. That's one of those great situations. We also found that down along the border, that's a very tedious task when you're doing river work along the border. You're launching, you're flying out to the river, which is probably about a 60-second flight. And then you're sitting in one spot going like, just moving the camera back and forth, watching your section of the river. We're like, this would be a much better job for a tether drone. And so you have the tether drone there, and now you're just moving it back and forth and you're watching your area of the river. If you now need to respond to something, that's when you put that free fly asset up and go actually respond. So again, it depends on the situation, but you have to be trained in all of these different aspects. You have to think through all of these different mechanisms, and you have to have the assets available.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really great example. And in fact, let's move on to topic 2 because it pertains to exactly what you just gave us a real life example. So topic 2 is, can you share a specific use case or success story that speaks to the benefit of tethered drones? You just answered that perfectly. But I want to start actually. Let's go to the next slide because this is for Chief Cheatham at Phoenix Fire Department. I wanted him to walk us through a real life example of him using a photokite system or an ATUAS. Chief, can you kind of walk us through what happened here?
Yeah, and this kind of ties into your last question of at this house fire that we had, the battalion chief arrived first early, popped up their tethered drone, and later on we did have our free fly drone come in because we get all of those in piped into our iPads, and so the chief's able to see different angles. On this specific fire, if you notice, this home has a tile roof. So in the city of Phoenix, residential homes, our ladder companies don't get on tile roofs because of the load and the potential for our firefighters to fall through the roof. So this was a perfect example. 2-story home with fire working throughout. With the drone being up, our command officers were able to see that the roof started to become compromised. They saw some red flags that they didn't like, so they went ahead and pulled their guys out of the home. And soon after that, I don't know if this is the video or just the picture, but right where you see that hose line spraying into that hole, literally probably 30 seconds after we pulled our guys out, that part of the roofs had a partial collapse there. And so just being able to have eyes on it, since we don't have a ladder crew up there, that tethered drone potentially saved some guys having the roof drop in on them. Additionally, with this, because it turned into a defensive fire, because some of the interior obstacles along with the structure being compromised, we were able to use the thermal picker that is gives you temperatures, radiometric temperatures. We're able to really direct our master streams on those areas, because we weren't able to be inside, weren't able to do overhaul like we like to do. So we were able to use that thermal picker to really identify hot spots and direct our master streams. And really that's going to expedite our ability to put out the fire, how long we're going to have to be on scene, how much water we're flowing, because we're flowing with a purpose in specific situations instead of just trying to drench the whole house. So the big takeaway from this was it gave them early eyes on the drone. The free fly drone was not even there yet, and they're able to pull their guys out when they were able to see the roof start to collapse. So if you just watch that, you could see there how that roof started to come in there. So really was huge in personnel safety for us.
Wow, that's amazing. And do you remember roughly what altitude you're flying at there?
That altitude, I believe we were probably about 100 feet. I actually arrived on scene because I was relieving that battalion, the person that was working there. So I jumped in the back seat and I had a firsthand view to all of this, and just the ease of them being able to control it. It was one of the reasons, like, we thought, hey, this is why we got this. This was a big win. And again, all of our guys got to come home rather than somebody having a roof collapse on them.
And that's amazing. That's the stuff we want to hear. That's awesome. When you were on scene, Chief, were you live streaming any of this? Did you share this with folks, or was it just kind of just directly on the tablet?
Well, it's directly on the tablet. At that time, we would text out the QR code to incoming responders, senior advisors. But now with the great update that PhotoKite made, we can have a persistent link. And now we have that static link just living where they could just click on it. So you guys have done a great job of taking out that extra step. So we did send it to some people, but now it's even more efficient, that live stream.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, what Chief's referring to is we have a URL that someone, in front of a computer can pop in with the passcode, and we can keep that passcode or link the same so that it's more routine on these types of situations. So let's move on to Jason. Let's go to that next slide so we can, because Jason had he's got an image here where he had a photokite system embedded into the back of his truck. So, and actually, Vanessa and I remember seeing this at a show last year. It was really cool. Jason, can you kind of walk us through a little bit about, some of the, I know you already shared a great example. Maybe you have another one of how you use this.
Yeah, we are always looking at what is the next thing, where can we innovate, what kind of technologies can we bring to the department to make it more efficient. So we started a little over a year ago. Actually, from my very first text on this was 2 years ago, about using a tethered drone in the back of an electric truck. And it took us about a year to go through all the hurdles to get the money and get the approvals and have the vehicle delivered and then get it, kind of outfitted and everything. So we have a couple F-150 Lightnings in the department now. I drive the one that you see here. And we had no idea, I drive the Tesla, so I know the benefits of that, but it's very different, the public safety use cases. And, we're out on things for a lot longer terms. And I didn't really know at the time, because there was no data on how a tethered drone would affect the battery efficiency of an electric truck. And I was actually kind of blown away. So first started off just sitting in the parking lot of headquarters, had the photokite up at 150 feet and just let it sit there for hours. And it only used 1% of truck battery per hour. That was crazy efficient. And so then we started to kind of push the boundary. So in the front of this truck is a kind of little mini command station. You got a curved monitor, you've got tablet mounts and tablets and radios and chargers. And in the back, you've got, Starlink and the photokite and all of those things. And we would show up to an event and it actually started getting better to where we're only using maybe 0.5% of battery per hour on the truck. And now you don't have to worry about having it outfitted with generators and having the engine running the whole time and exhaust and all those things, all that noise, because the truck is a generator on wheels, right? And it started being crazy efficient. So the picture you see there, where actually Captain Fritch and I are at a community event. We do this event every year at the local church in the area of town we live, and we have all the kids come out and they fly the simulator, and we have the tethered drone in the air for 5 or 6 hours just sitting up there, and it barely puts a dent, and you can run our entire setup off of the truck, right? The nice thing about the photokite over some other options is it is way more power efficient than some of the things that you will find out there. And that's been a huge benefit. And then even when we, if anybody's been to some of the conferences that we go to, we've actually had the truck on the show floor with the tether, with the photokite on the convention floor. And everybody's like, well, you can't be flying a drone. Well, we're not flying a drone. It can't go anywhere. Well, you can't have the truck running. Well, I don't have to have the truck running, right? It's just a battery. And so it takes a little bit of a culture shift, but we're finding huge benefits on these two kind of technologies coming together and make everybody more efficient.
And that's awesome. You know, this was the first time I'd ever seen our system embedded with a fully electric vehicle. So it was really good learning for us as well, because I mean, I would imagine that EVs are going to be more popular over time in public safety. So that's really good to know.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because it's the first time that it's probably the only video I've ever been on in TikTok that I didn't know of, right? First of all, I'm not a TikTok user, we have a state thing, but we got a information request from an agency in Delaware or something else, and they were like, hey, can you send us all the build out information on your F-150 with the photokite? I'm like, man, how did you even find out about this? And they're like, oh yeah, it's all over TikTok. I'm like, seriously? So found somebody in the office who had TikTok on their phone, and sure as enough, somebody filmed the entire outside of the truck and all the different pieces and stuff and put that. Apparently there's some TikTok public safety channels or whatever you call it in TikTok that was kind of advertising it as well.
Oh, that's another added benefit. Photokite can make you an influencer. We'll throw that in the specs. Well, let's move on to panel discussion 3. And I definitely want to start with Matt on this one, just because I think Matt's has a really unique experience with a vast array of really all different types of drones. And by the way, Jason, very good. Photokite is technically not a drone; is an actively tethered UAS. So we always make sure that we mention that. Sometimes there's a negative connotation with that word. But Matt, I wanted to ask you, what would, for our attendees, what would be some advice that you'd give to other law enforcement or any public safety agency looking to start a tethered drone program or just any type of drone program, and how would they ensure a more efficient and effective implementation?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And look, we have this conversation about 5 times a day. So, I think the most important thing is to first figure out what your use cases are going to be and what the most important use cases are. And so, I think there's a temptation to want to go out and buy the most expensive, flashy, coolest, newest thing. And that's typically not the right move in this space. If you're looking to do primarily an indoor tactical, SWAT type drone program, you don't want a big giant outdoor drone. Similarly, if you want to sit over crowds for 6, 10, 12 hours for a big event, a small indoor tactical drone is not going to be the right move for you. And so it's typically a combination of those things. I mean, I think nobody sort of exemplifies that more than Jason, because he's got the whole state to cover. And there's just there's a lot of different use cases. And so that's always the first question is, what are you going to use it for? And typically agencies will have, they'll say, well, we want to use it for everything, but the primary use case is XYZ. And so whatever that use case is, that's where we start. And we'll typically recommend systems for them based on what they're looking to do there. Obviously budget is a big consideration for everybody. And so, whether they're going out and buying a, $1,500 drone at Best Buy, or they really want to put money into a program. The flip side of that coin is that, and I don't say this to offend anybody, and I hope nobody takes it that way, but if you go out and buy a $1,500 drone, you don't have a drone program, you have a drone. A drone program requires you to do training. It requires you to do the proper FAA authorization, and not just initial training, but recurrent training, and in situ training. So actually, training for things that you're going to see, not just flying it around in a parking lot. So I would definitely recommend, before you dive into starting a drone program, to make sure that you have money set aside, or at least a space and some consideration set aside for, I need to train operators, I need to get the right authorizations and things like that. Certainly there are some differences between agencies who use 107 versus a COA, and we're not going to get into that here, but some of those require a specific type of certification or specific type of training. Others require, sort of a more general training. And then, of course, with the photo kite, it's important to really remember that even though you don't need a 107 or a COA, you still need training. So just like you're not going to send an officer out with a taser or send an officer out or a firefighter out to drive a fire engine without training, it's very similar with UAS. And so those are, I think, a lot of the big considerations. There's certain others, I think, that are really important too, like where are you going to put the drone? If you are, like Chief Cheatham in Phoenix, you've got a big jurisdiction, you've got a lot of different firehouses, or in Jason's case, you've got the entire state to cover. Which vehicle you're going to put the drone in is a critical decision. It can make or break your drone program. And so even, we have, I think it's 19 fire stations here just in the city of Huntsville where I'm based. And, it's very difficult to figure out exactly, do you put them on the engine? And if you're going to put them on the engine, does it need to be on every engine? Does it need to be on specialty teams like, SWAT, tactical, K9, heavy rescue, hazmat, that kind of thing? But how are you going to be able to ensure that the drone is where it needs to be when you need it there? And I think that's one of the beauties of the tethered system is, it doesn't, I think Chief Cheatham mentioned this earlier too, it doesn't take somebody away from doing their job that they're there to do, to be a cop or a firefighter. It just gives you that overwatch. And so those are all big considerations. Another one, and again, this is not the right webinar to have this conversation, but are you able to buy Chinese or not Chinese? That's a big topic of conversation right now. I think my money is on, it's time to start moving away from those aircraft, whether we like it or not. And that's, again, a topic for another time, but it is a big consideration when you're starting a program because it's going to change your budget requirements. It's going to change the type of aircraft that you buy. So those would be my general recommendations.
No, I honestly, man, I think it's totally okay to talk about that. It impacts every public safety agency right now. And yeah, I mean, the good thing about PhotoKite, it is made in the U.S. in Zurich, Switzerland. So that does help in that regard. But it's kind of unfortunate, but there's nothing we can really do about it because some of these other free flying drones out there, unfortunately, are made in China. So I think it's an important thing to talk about and discuss, I think. So one question I had was for a department that, and this also goes to Daniel and Jason, for a department that has no drone program, or maybe that Best Buy drone example, is it fair to say an ATUS would be a good place to start? Or maybe not. Maybe is it better to start with a free flying or just your conventional drones first? As far
I think yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I know, I think
No,
it
you're good.
depends on where you're trying to get, right? I mean, if the idea is like, look, we really just want to have, some perspective on our scenes, then I think ATUAS is a great place to start. I mean, it is an investment. Whereas, the Best Buy drone isn't as much of an investment. And so what we typically tell people is if you really just want to dip your toe in the water, it's okay to get the Best Buy drone. The thing is, you just want to make sure that once you get it, you have somebody trained to fly it and that they have some type of certification and that they're flying where they're allowed to fly. But it's a great way to say, hey, you know what, for the next 6 months, we're going to go buy one drone. We're going to train 1 to 4 people and just say, okay, for this type of call, we're going to make a priority to get that person there, get it up in the air and just see what kind of data it gives us. I think that's a reasonable approach. And I think that, potentially an ATUAS might be too much of a toe in the water if you're just testing it out. Certainly, if your whole goal is like, look, we got a big event coming up and we just want to keep it in the air for hours and hours, or we want to be hands off, we want to pull up to a fire or a crime scene and, open the slide and hit the button, it's a great place to start. So it really just depends. Again, back to the first question, what's your use case?
Yep. Everything he just said is right on. It's all about the mission, whether it be traffic incident management or fire or something like that. So it could be the best initial option because that's what you've identified that you're going to do with your program. And then maybe you build into other future mission sets. So it's all about the mission.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just thinking out loud a little bit. I mean, just because of that Part 107 exemption, you can kind of get a feel for. I mean, it seems like with a photokite system that there's a much more people that are going to be using that system than obviously your dedicated drone pilot. So maybe that would help in aiding a department in starting or kicking off a drone program. Is that fair to say?
I think
would be
it's
I
a way
would
to
be
get. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, well, okay. I would be contrary to that point because I think even if you're flying a tethered drone, or let's not say tether or whatever, you're going to have a UAS program. Your initial people need to be 107 trained so they understand airspace and all the rules and regulations. And then those specific operators of that technology down the road may not need to be, but your core, your leadership, the people that are building out the program, they need to have all that from
Yeah.
the get-go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd 100% agree, like Jason just said, and like Matt, you know, the mission determines kind of what you need, but your initial people should be 107. But anybody that's starting a program, just a couple of quick points is do your research. I bet if Jason had a quarter for how many agencies called up him or Austin Fire, Coy Kessler, and Jason have been leaders in this industry for a while, he'd be a rich man. So, but everybody is willing to help the next program come along, whether it's free fly or tethered drones. I think it's also engaging, you know, the stakeholders. With me, my leadership, my bosses, you know, they are very good at advocating on behalf of the fire department to our city manager's office, just because of the structure system we have. You know, making sure you're tying in operations, because they may just think, oh, drones, and not really know the benefits. So really all your different stakeholders, tying them in. And then, you know, the local airports, even though these tethered drones have a lot more flexibility than maybe free fly with what they can do, we still have great relationships with the airports and letting them know, hey, this is our new technology. You know, this is how we're thinking about deploying it, because what a lot of people don't understand is that the FAA tower and the airport are two different entities, and they may not both know what's going on. So having those that dialogue has really benefited our program for both tethered and free fly. And then just making sure you're documenting your success cases, because everybody's data driven now. And when our city leaders and our department leaders start seeing the impact, just like that video from this photokite drone, that's going to help, you know, springboard your program, because they're seeing the benefits of it. So just a few things that I would say anybody that's looking to start a tethered drone or a drone program.
One thing I just want to add to that.
He
Go
said
ahead.
something really powerful in there, and I kind of want to dissect that for just a second. And that's the collaborative piece of all of this, right? We are huge advocates on LE and fire and EMS and incident management all working together. And your fire agencies and your traffic management folks are normally going to have more tethered assets than your LE, right? So you have to have that collaborative culture. You need to know who all the agencies are around you, work and train with them on a regular basis. So you can make that phone call and say, hey, can you guys bring your tethered asset to our scene, because we don't have one, and just help each other out, because that's what it's really all about at the end of the day.
Yeah, two things I want to play off, one from each of you guys. You know, one to Jason's point too. I can't tell you the number of times we've gotten calls from an agency in a particular area that's like, we want to start a drone program and we don't know where to start, and they don't even know that the other department in their own jurisdiction has a drone program, or the town right next door has one, because they don't talk to each other. And so, and this happened, you know, a lot of times. There are certain pockets of the country where we have, you know, 24 customers in the same metro area, and I'm like, hey, thanks for calling me. I'm very happy to sell you something if you want, but if you want information, like, just go next door, because they'll tell you everything you need to know, and we can help, you know, fill in the gaps there. But on top of that too, something that Chief Cheatham said too, and you mentioned Coit from Austin Fire Department, who we, you know, those of us in this industry know and love, and I've known him for almost, you know, 11 years now, is that internal sales pitch, right? So I mean, there's obviously, you know, get the city managers on board, but when you actually start using these, make sure that you know that all the stakeholders within your own department are aware, because one of the things that Coit will tell you if he was here is that when he started the program in Austin, he's like, we had battalion chiefs who either didn't know about it or refused to use it or didn't know how to even activate the drone program if they needed it. And so the internal sales pitch is as important as the external sales pitch, because guess what? If people don't use it, then it's not going to get a lot of use, and then not get a lot of use means you don't get money next year to buy more and keep the program up and running. And so that's super critical when you're starting one of these programs.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Just because I'm going to be respectful of our time, let's go to the next panel discussion. And Matt, I want to pick your brain first on this. I also want to leave room for questions at the end. Looking ahead, so like in the future, what are some of the UAS capabilities or features that you think would benefit the operations of public safety agencies? And what are some of these technologies that you think we could see over the next 5 to 10 years? I know 10 years may be a little bit of a stretch with the way things move these days, but at PhotoKite, I'll just say real quick, we are always trying to provide more tools, especially for folks that already have our systems with updates. For example, we just came out with remote control, like remote launch. That's going to be a software option for folks, things like that, those types of features. What do you think?
I love this question because like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years. And so I've seen what's happened in the past 10, and I think I have a good idea of what's coming. And it'll probably be all of the things that I think are coming will probably happen in the next year. And then the other 9, it'll be just exponential from there. But, 10 years ago, we were duct taping GoPros to drones, and because the onboard cameras were so bad that we needed something better. But and that's actually not an exaggeration. We did that with Parrots, an original toy drone, and I think those of us who have been paying attention know that Parrots come a long way in the last 10 years. But that said, this is a little bit controversial when I answer this question, because I actually think that the drone is the least interesting part of what's happening in the next 10 years. I think the drone is just a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox. It's really all about what sensors are going to be on it, what software is controlling it. AI is going to be, a huge part of what's to come. And I say that as the co-founder of an AI company. Some of the stuff that we're looking at is just truly unbelievable. I mean, what we have done over the past 10 years is put the drone up in the air, look for stuff with what one of my old business partners used to call the Mod 1 eyeball. You're looking at the video just to see what's happening. Now we have all kinds of, machine vision and motion detection algorithms and all different types of software to process this data. And the truth of the matter is that we're all busy doing other things during these calls. And so we can't watch all the time. We can't sit there and digest all of this, every frame of video. And so we are going to have to start relying on autonomy, relying on AI. There are obviously certain things that the FAA doesn't want us to rely completely on AI or autonomy for, and that's understandable. A couple of us here are manned aircraft pilots, and I would like to not be in an aircraft when a drone decides by itself to go do something. But I think AI is going to be really important for that task saturation that our pilots face all the time. And so when we're busy, we're looking at things like airspace and weather and looking for traffic around us. And we're also trying to watch what's going on the fire or the law enforcement, operation that's unfolding. Autonomy can help us with some of those things, and it can help us sort of plan past what we're seeing in the 30 seconds in front of our faces. And so, one of the guys that we work closely with, came from the FBI's drone program, and he said, we have volumes and volumes and volumes of video that we shot that we just never looked at, because unless it was happening right in front of our faces, it was like there and gone, right? And so that's where I think a lot of the advances are going to come is obviously the sensors are getting better. The software that we're getting to process that data is getting better. And then, you mentioned the remote flying stuff with the PhotoKite, which I think is huge. I mean, we all, Jason and I have talked about DFR at length, but the, drone first responder type programs where, drones are launching remotely, either flying to a place, which would be like a free flying drone, or let's say, for example, we have a PhotoKite that's docked over, a critical infrastructure location, and we remotely launch it. We're not standing right there. that's going to be huge too, and that really saves time and resources. And look, it shouldn't surprise anybody on this webinar that most agencies in the country are at least 30% understaffed, and so to the extent we can use this technology to fill those gaps, I think is absolutely critical.
Yeah, to add to that, the understaffing thing is huge, right? Because I just had a conversation with some folks at Texas A&M Engineering, and they're like, "Hey, are you guys doing one person's flying multiple drones?" And my answer was no. They're like, "Well, why not? I mean, it's so easy. There's all this software." I'm like, "Yeah, but one person cannot effectively process what is going on from all of those drones at one time." So the one drone, one pilot model still is still right now the most effective tool that we have. But as soon as you're able to incorporate AI and image learning and image recognition into all of this, now you could literally have somebody who's trained on that function that's just pushing a button, and the drone is going out and it's doing its thing, and you're just focused on what the sensor information is giving you. Because to Matt's point, that's exactly what these are. They're flying sensors in some way or another.
Yeah, I'd agree with these guys as far as just the more autonomous features, object detection, hotspots, just anything that software can take the workload off of the pilot would be huge. And again, everything that they just said, AI is going to be huge in the next 2 years, let alone 5 to 10 years. So
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, the things that are coming out, I mean, almost on a monthly basis, it's pretty amazing. So I know it's kind of a difficult question a little bit to try and predict what's going to come down the pipe and what can be applicable. But one thing's for sure is there'll definitely be many other tools at your all's disposal, hopefully. So it's an incredible tool for sure.
I touch on
And-
one more
Yeah,
quick
please.
thing, and it's a shameful plug because I just put out an article on this, but the transition from everybody owning their own aircraft to the drone as a service model, I think is going to really start to proliferate this year. And where you can strategically place assets across an entire city or jurisdiction, and multiple agencies can leverage those tools when they need them, right? Whether it be tethered or drone in a box or whatever. And now you're just paying for a level of access to that technology instead of having to purchase it, maintain it, and have the infrastructure to support it.
So in that example, you mean more like a municipality would own that asset and it would be available to all public safety agencies, or no? What do you,
Private sector would
just
own the
private
assets,
sector? Gotcha.
and public safety would just leverage, just pay a monthly fee to access those things. Because how many agencies have bought drones and now they have a bunch of stuff sitting on a shelf collecting dust because they just don't fly very often, right? Why spend all that money on the hardware when you could just pay a monthly fee to be able to access the tools that you need in the moment?
That's really
I-
interesting. Yeah.
I love that, and obviously I come at this from the private sector angle, but this is exactly what we do, and so we actually are operating a couple of DFR programs on behalf of agencies, and it's great because they don't have to. I mean, they have their own patrol programs in a lot of cases too, so it's not like they're not doing some drone stuff, but they don't have to buy the equipment, they don't have to train the operators, they don't have to worry about airspace, they don't have to worry about integration or software. They just say, okay, here's a check, you guys figure it all out. We bring the boys, we bring the toys, so to speak, and they just get what they need, and it works really nicely. And so I think there's this, and I completely understand it. There's this sort of initial hesitation about like, well, I don't want to outsource this. We need sworn officers, we need trained firefighters. And at the end of the day, the people that I have flying are not going to make decisions about how to affect the outcome of a law enforcement call or a fire rescue call. They're just going to get the drone there and get you the imagery and still leave it to you. But it's a model that works really nicely. And I can say that from firsthand experience. Just the other night, actually, I had to fill in for one of our pilots and was able to actually save a police officer's life. I was at the sticks, and it was really exciting because rather than just talking about this, it's nice to actually be able to get my hands dirty and do something. So it really is a great model.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. And we really appreciate those insights, guys. What do you guys have anything else that you want to add? And if not, I'll have my colleague Andy dive into some questions that the attendees have.
One other thing I just want to add really quickly, just to put a bug in everybody's ear, just to start thinking about it too, is everything we've talked about from this point up to this point is sensor based. And I would encourage everybody to start thinking about what happens when we start putting things like defibrillators and EpiPens and Narcan and actual response tools on drones. It's starting to happen, and not a lot of people are doing it yet, but it's definitely something that I would pay close attention to, and something that I think really starts to move this to the next level. So
you're starting to see that already?
We're starting to do it. Yeah, actually, we're doing some test cases and stuff like that. So more on that at a future date.
And endless applications. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Andy, do you want to start off with our first question?
Awesome. Yes, can do. Yeah, thank you all for a great webinar. Lots of great information coming out of this. So our first question for the panelists is, how do you evaluate the success or failure of operations post-incident? Do you look back at drone footage?
This is Jason. I'll jump in real quick. As far as reviewing footage, at the end, it's going to depend on what the actual mission was and if we recorded. The majority of the time, we may record in the moment, but then once that flight is over, unless it has evidentiary or training value, we actually delete all of our drone videos. Because A, they take up space, and there's always PII that is collected, even though it's inadvertent, right? Cameras are very wide angle, and especially when you're flying through a city, there's people in apartment complexes and hotels, and you never know what's actually on that video. So why kind of keep it? So that's just on the data side for me.
Yeah, similar to us, if we obviously we're always live streaming. Not everyone gets recorded, but usually like structure fires and things like that, we do like to record. One, in case something happens. Two, to utilize them for training and things like that. So it really depends on what's the event. But if there's anything that we can gain as far as value, learning, what can we do better next time, then we're going to save that and push it out to our training team.
Awesome. Let's see, another question. How can we improve knowledge sharing between senior and junior team members when it comes to drones?
Well, I'll jump in. For us, it's just that team environment. The more reps you get, the better you are at things. And so it's taking them out there and putting them through training, through mission specific. I'm sorry. Mission specific training, things like that, and to make sure that whoever's flying that drone, that they can all have the same deliverables to the end user. So just making sure everybody's up to snuff for us.
Great. Let's see, one more question for the panelists. There's many benefits to a tethered program. Can you think of any drawbacks?
The only one I'll just say real quickly is that you can't, go outside of the area of the tethered aircraft. So, if that's something you need to do, it's not the right tool for that particular job. But you guys have a lot more experience using them, on site.
For us, because we don't have a lot of AI or image recognition software tools right now, it's complacency. A human being cannot be expected to sit and stare at the screen actively for hours on end before their phone goes off, or now they're answering an email, or oh, this is on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. But people are easily distracted, so you run into the human factor of it. So.
Great. And let's see, we have a photokite question. So which software do you utilize to stream the video video feed from the photokite? Are you capable of streaming video simultaneous from both the photokite and the free flight drone using the same software?
So we use we have a software called PhotoKite Live, and that's available on Android or Apple Store. And it can be controlled with an iPad or a PhotoKite provided rugged tablet or an Android tablet. But to answer the question about the streaming, it is compatible with the Axon ecosystem. So it can be loaded through it can be streamed through evidence.com and even Fusus. But as far as our software, it's only going to stream, the PhotoKite stream is only going to come through our software.
And let's see, one more photokite question. How long does the battery last if it's not tethered to a battery source like an electric EV?
Yeah, that's a good question. And Jason, maybe you can weigh in with your experience, but I'll just say that PhotoKite has a backup battery in the kite and the ground station. And the purpose of those batteries is if there's a power failure or control failure. So let's say Jason turns off his truck, or well, maybe it wouldn't work within a lightning, but let's say it's DC power to a regular vehicle. You cut the power by turning off the vehicle. You unplug it while it's flying. Those backup batteries kick in to keep it in the air so that it can safely land on its own. Or if anything that you could think of that would interrupt the power supply to the tether itself, that's where those backup batteries come in. But when it's flying, it's drawing continuous power through that tether. So it's not using those batteries per se when it's flying for long periods of time. It's just for that safety backup mechanism.
Great, let's see. And then another question, do radiation sensors on a drone or photokite need to be cleared through the state radiations division?
I'm not sure if when I said radiometric, it being able to take temperature readings, if maybe that's where they got the radiation. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that one. Jason, do you by chance have an answer to
We're
that?
just getting going with our radiological program, so I don't know the answer.
It's a good question. Yeah, we'll find an answer and get back to you.
Let's see, technical know-how, how about drone services and training, could it be made local? And maybe they're looking for information about drones. Where's the best place to find information about all of this and compare drones in the best way?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick plug for drone responders. If you're not already paying attention to drone responders, that's a great location. Chief Warner has done a great job of cultivating a lot of really smart people, and it's a great working group of, I don't know, it's got to be hundreds, if not thousands, of agencies now. So that's a great place to start.
And just to piggyback on that, drone responders, many people have uploaded their documents and stuff, so you can literally see whether it's training or other ways that they've built their program, and you can cut and paste your own.
Great, no, good answers. Let's see, a couple more questions. Once the drone is deployed, can the vehicle move slowly? I think we know the answer to this.
Well, yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah. Well, let me ask Chief and Jason. I know you guys tried it, didn't you? No? He's laughing now. Well, the answer is no. You can, I'll just say that's coming in the future. But for right now, there is when the vehicle is moving, say when it's flying, it will detect motion. The system will detect motion. You'll get a notification on the screen, and the system will automatically deploy or descend. It'll automatically land. So it'll take, in general, when it's at about 150 feet, the max height, it'll take about 60 seconds for that kite to get all the way back down to the ground station. Obviously, when I'm speaking about photokite specifically, it might be different for the short list of folks that are categorized as an ATUAS. But that is something that we get that question a lot, and it's something that we are developing for particular applications.
Awesome. Looks like two more questions. Let's see. Could black box be incorporated into the drone in the issue of a fire? Not sure what the black box is.
Chief, do you know what that is?
I'm not sure what they're referencing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, But we can look into that and get back to you. Yeah, I'm not familiar either. Our apologies.
Let's see, one more question. This person says, thank you for putting this together. What type of drones are suitable to fighting fire? No fire is the same. Yeah.
From the fire side, I think we've all kind of touched on it. You know, it just depends what's your mission. And I think, like I spoke to before, a tiered system is good. The tethered drone has its benefits and its specific place on a fire scene, and then your free fly drones too that can get around to the backside. That maybe that free fly drone has some different sensors because it's just, you know, different platforms. So I really think a mixed bag. There's no, I think, one drone that's perfect for a specific mission, but for us, having the tethered drones and then being able to supplement those with our free fly drones, and the different capabilities that they bring to bear at the scene, really kind of help with that. I think an area that we're really looking at, and maybe, you know, Jason or Matt could speak on this, is hazmat detection. You know, when you get into rotor wash or things like that, of really being able to implement and detect and use them effectively on hazardous materials incidents, outside of just being able to identify placards and signage and things like that.
Yeah, very good. And we have one more sneaking in. Will the drone be able to identify power lines above it if launched from the top of a fire department command vehicle?
That's another really good question. The answer is no. Just like with any type of drone, you got to be aware of where you're putting the UAS. So in general, we say you should give yourself about 15 feet of a diameter of clear space, and that also includes any obstructions above the system. So, you know, you got to look out for the trees, power lines, bridges. That's really the only main responsibility as the operator, is just making sure that you're deploying this in a clear space. So these are really great questions, and I'll tell you what, if you have any more, we'll certainly get to those. We'll get back to you guys individually later. I just want to say thank you for your all's time and for the opportunity to hear the insights and experiences of our panel experts. And I just want to pass it on to Vanessa to close it up for us.
Yeah, sure, no problem, Chris. So we will have this recording available on fireengineering.com's webcast link. There's a folder, and we will also have the same thing with this recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll also be sharing it out on social media. So make sure to follow us on our LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all the major socials, X. And a few people did put in questions regarding pricing and more information on PhotoKite. You can contact us at sales@photokite.com. And this is the link to submit an inquiry to connect you to our sales team. If you'd prefer to do it that way, it's all on our website.
Awesome. Well, thank you all again. This was fantastic. Definitely got a lot out of this. And as Vanessa said, those resources are available to all of you. And we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you all again.
Thank you
Thanks for
very
having
much.
us, Chris.